nze musenze musa kusinziira wano e Bugadde naye nga nzaala ku kyalo biseera kalooba kola muno nenimiikirizaamu kuba saawa eno nzimbyemu enumba mpanvu eno boys quarter eruuyi n'eruuyi eno eriyo emizigo 6 eno yaaba emizigo 2 nakola mu saaluuni nnene ino wendogerera saawa eno erimu obukaire nga 4.5.
In 2007, when we started with the Upland Rice, that is the Upland Rice project, that was a new product we brought in. With the help of the governments through SACCO, they gave us 32 million pilot test, and we were very successful.
I borrowed 1 million from the SACCO, and I put it on this work, fishing, and I benefit from the fishing.
Sente zibuze ku bwongo bwaffe, butamanya nkozesa ya byansimbi, butamanya sente zikozesebwa zitya, butamanya sente ziri luddawa, butamanya butabeera mu bunyiikivu.
Dear viewers of UBC TV, Inspiring Uganda, once again welcome to SACCO Matters program on UBC TV. I'm Salim Yusuf, taking you through this program. And tonight in the studios we are honored to host none other than the chairperson of Uganda Cooperative Savings and Credit Union, Alhaj Yassine Nume. Most welcome to UBC TV.
Good evening, viewers.
Yeah, thank you. And today we would like to look at governance. There has been a lot of calls and messages in our previous programs in respect that yes, SACCOs are dying. It's a problem of poor governance in this country, which is leading to institutions for which your institution, actually another institution, are leading. So I will be very grateful tonight that you're able to discuss for us what is this element called governance, and how is maybe governance good for an institution. So from that point of view, from where we start, what is governance?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And I'm privileged to be talking about issues of governance. I want to appreciate, first of all, the background upon which this program has been organized, that SACCOs are collapsing. I can say some, not all. But to answer the question, governance, generally, we are talking about how do we exercise power in a SACCO in a manner that the economic and social resources are managed to ensure sustainable human development. That is the Commonwealth version of good governance. How, for instance, when we look at the governance structure in a SACCO, how is the board using the powers vested into it by the members, by the annual general meeting, to manage the economic resources, to make sure the members benefit. When we look at human development, we are looking at members benefiting by doing economic projects that can help them to uplift their living standards. So how is management, top management, guiding the activities of the SACCO to make sure that the members again benefit from the organizations they have started? To be a bit more practical, we would look at good governance in SACCOs from about 3 or 4 areas. How these people charged with the responsibility of managing SACCOs ensure that 1, members' share capital is protected. 2, how do they manage the SACCO to ensure the savings of the members are safe. Then 3, how do we manage the loan portfolio? Because when we talk of these savings and credit cooperatives, we are looking at even the lending component of it. Now, how do we manage that loan portfolio to make sure that members' money is protected? Those that borrow are able to pay back and pay back in time, such that again there is funds, the funds are available for onward lending. And then how do we ensure that members, the general membership, is informed of what is taking place in a clear manner, in a transparent manner? We are communicating to the members, we are providing them with the information. So when we look at all those issues, we shall be looking at governance in these circles. And we believe that when, of course, the board as the overall lead organ of the management of the SACCO takes the, has that full responsibility of making sure that systems and processes are put in place to make sure that members' share capital is safe, the loan portfolio is properly managed, they put in place checks and balances, the internal controls, all those issues come together to form that thing called good governance.
Okay. Yeah, you've describing what governance is all about, and but who are these in governance in the SACCO?
That question is quite interesting. Who are those involved in governance of the SACCO? We have about 4 structures. We have the board, we have the management team, we have the committees that do some work, but we have also the general membership. Now, the responsibility of putting in place processes, designing controls, or making sure management puts in place adequate controls to safeguard the savings of members, the share capital, and all those economic resources in a SACCO rests with the board according to the principles of corporate governance. And then management takes the lead in designing, and then when they design, they seek the final approval of the board. Then we have committees that help on the checking or making sure things move systematically or move as per the policies and procedures put in place by the board. We have, say, a loans committee. That one is supposed to evaluate, say, loan applications before someone is given a loan, to assess the capacity of that person to pay back the loan. And then we have, say, a supervisory committee. That one checks on what the board is doing together with the management and the other committees of the board. So those are, the supervisory committee does the role of internal auditing in a SACCO. So it's a key element of in the governance system, whereby it checks on the excesses of both the board and management, and then the committees of the board. But it is also important to underscore the critical role of the annual general, the annual membership. Through the annual general meeting, these other organs are put in place. For instance, the annual general meeting, which is the general assembly for all members of the SACCO, elects the board. Then they also elect the supervisory committee. Now, that one is important in the sense that the members are now having a critical role of making sure that the people put in these positions of responsibility, like the board and the supervisory committee, are people of high moral integrity, people who have ethical values, not just selecting people into leadership positions, but they need to make sure that the people being elected into leadership are those with integrity, those who are committed to serving the SACCO ethically, to uphold the ethical values, because when you talk of integrity, when you talk of ethics, you talk of honesty, all those are core values of the good governance system. So the members themselves they need to realize their critical role in making sure that they put in place quality leadership, which quality leadership now will make sure that there are good processes and procedures, good internal controls in place.
You are bringing in the element of, that is talked about management, and you're talking about the board. How are the two linked? Is it because are you the board who runs the day-to-day activities? Which one does what and which one does what? The two organs you have talked about in that structure.
Yeah, thank you for that. Again, quite interesting question. The board is elected during the annual general meeting, and then management is a team of technical people who are presumably knowledgeable on management and financial management to do the technical work of managing the SACCO. The board is elected during the annual general meeting, but the management team is appointed by the board. So that's how the two organs are put in place. Then the board is responsible for policy formulation and approving policies, making sure good policies are putting in place controls and procedures. Then management is charged with the day-to-day running of the SACCO. So that's generally what we can say about those two organs.
So when we are talking about good governance, are we saying it is the responsibility of the board? Are we showing the responsibility of the management? Where are we placing the good governance element in a SACCO?
This one is quite interesting, and right from the beginning of this program, I have highlighted all those organs involved in the structure of the SACCO. Now, you know, good governance should be a commitment of all these, and each one of these organs has a specific duty to play. I said the annual General Assembly has the responsibility of vetting from amongst themselves who are those that qualify, who are those that are ethical, who are those that are honest among the membership, who should form the lead team that's to be on the board. So they have a critical role, so they have that component. Once they have identified and put in place good leaders, then they have played their critical role. Now, when it comes to, say, management is supposed to initiate some of these policies, some of, say, learning policy, the human resource policy, and designing even controls, and then they present them to the board. So again, we find that management has that critical role to play of making sure systems and processes are designed. Management takes lead in that. But then the board must make sure that it puts management on its toes to make sure that they come up with such policies. And when those policies are brought up, they are discussed by the board and approved. Then again, it's the responsibility of the board to make sure that the policies are followed as laid down in the approved documents. Then when it comes to these other committees, say supervisory committee, it must make sure that it checks, reviews what the board and management have been doing, and then to report accurately and transparently to the general membership. and say your board is either doing the right job or it's not doing what? The right job, because of the policies, the standards, the code of ethics that have been designed. Those now become the standards upon which the supervisory committee, for instance, can use to determine whether things are moving appropriately or not. Then say the loans committee, are they approving loans based on the lending policy? Because the lending policy should now be telling people who is supposed to get a loan, what is the maximum amount that can be loaned, and then how would you come to get a loan? What is the procedure? The loans committee should be following the lending policy to approve people who have applied for loans, and then say this one qualifies for this amount of money after following them. So they are also supposed to uphold, to follow that guidance. So if they float the guidance, then we are seeing a problem starting to come up. Now when they follow the policy, then we are saying they are also fulfilling their duties. So good governance in general is contributor. And the several actors have a role to play. And when each actor plays his or her role accurately and properly, then a combination of those good actions by each party will lead us into that thing we are calling good governance.
To some people, Chairman, they think that if we are the members of the SACCO and we are the owners of the SACCO, so why again try to bring in this structure, dictate one management, why should you compel us to have good governance in the SACCO? It's of any value for us, because the simple thing for us, we know what we want to do. So why bring those principles which perhaps are foreign and people think it will not work?
It's quite a very good question. You know, SACCOs are member-owned, member-controlled, member-used, and they benefit members. So, if you are the member and you know what you want, fine. And if you are the members and you know how to get what you want, fine. But now we are saying that not all members are involved in the day-to-day running of an organization. For example, it would be ironical to bring, say, 350 members of a SACCO on daily basis or even monthly basis to come and supervise what is going on in the SACCO. That's why there is a representation. Now, if once we introduce in the issue of representation, there is also another question that comes out. How sure are we as members who are not directly involved in the management of SACCOs, sure that the people we have entrusted with this representation are doing a good work? So again, this one is a stewardship role. So you entrust someone to manage an organization on your behalf. Once that one is introduced in an organization, then the element of making sure that your interests are protected comes in. Now, when that one comes in, that's where you see us coming up with these issues of good governance, the principles of good governance. They are geared towards ensuring that the member who is not directly involved in the day-to-day running of an organization has his or her interests protected. That's the core issue. Because these principles are coming up to make sure the organization is managed properly. So the proper management of the organization benefits the individual members. That's why they come in. And then too, when immediately you start collecting, receiving, if it's their personal funds, no one will bother you. you can spend, you can receive and spend as you wish. But once you start receiving money from other people, then that one becomes public finance. So public funds, government picks interest, and the issues of regulation come in. That's why there is a department for cooperative development to do the supervision and making sure the regulation is properly done. So once again you receive money from other people and put it together, you cannot run away from the regulation. But the most important thing is to assure the members that these are not imposed for these principles are not being imposed for the sake of it. They are being imposed for the benefit, for the betterment of the members themselves, to make sure that their interests are adequately and properly protected.
Dear viewers, you are still watching the SACCO Matters program on UBC TV. We are hosting the chairperson Uganda Cooperative Savings and Credit Union, Alhaji Yasin Lume, with whom we are discussing the issues of how good governance is very key to the success of the SACCO. And when we come back, we're going to ask him to give us more information why or who brings these principles that we've been talking about of good governance, who constitutes them. Perhaps maybe are they foreign imposed or are they made by the members themselves? Where do they come from to be able to be institutionalized in our SACCO?
Nienze musenze musa kusinzira wano ebugade enganza lwaki kukyalo biseera kaluba kola muno nenuminkiriza kuba saawa eno nzimbyemu enumba mpanvu eno boys quarter eruyi n'eruyi eno eriyo emizigo 6 eno yaba emizigo 2 nakola mu saluuni nnene ino wendogerera saawa eno erimu obukaire nga 4.5.
In 2007, when we started with the Upland Rice, the Upland Rice project, that was a new product we brought in. With the help of the government through Suffice, they gave us 32 million pilot test, and we were very successful.
I borrow 1 million from the SACCO, and I put it on this work, fishing, and I benefit from the fishing.
Sente zibuze ku bwongo bwaffe, butamanya nkozesa ya byansimbi, butamanya sente zikozesebwa zitya, butamanya sente ziri luddawa, butamanya butabeeramu bunyiikivu.
Welcome back from the break, and as I told you earlier, we are hosting the chairperson Uganda Cooperative Savings and Credit Union, Alhaji Yasin Lume, with whom we are discussing how governance is very important for the success of the SACCOs. And before we went to the break, he had told us the principles of good governance, and so we wanted to know who brings these principles. Is it the members? Are they, because we now have donors, are they the donors who are bringing them? Is it government which brings them? Where do they come from?
Yeah, thank you. Now, how do these principles come into existence? Are they imposed or not? If to answer that question, are they imposed or not, I will say it's yes and no. Yes, they are imposed, and also at the same time they are not imposed. Now, if the members have the capacity to determine how their SACCO can be run and properly managed, they can come up with their own principles. So those can be called self-generated principles. You know, these principles, as we said, aim at ensuring that the members' interests are protected. So if you come up with a system of principles that will help you to protect your interests, it's a welcome idea. But as I said, that whenever you receive public money, and this is money from several individuals, government picks interest. So it automatically has that responsibility of making sure that the public money is protected. Whether you are managing it privately or not, it will now come in with laws and regulations to make sure that whatever you do is regulated. And if you violate, then the law comes in to reprimand the violator and protect the members. So some principles are imposed by legislation, and legislation is done in the best interest of the community. That's why we have currently the cooperative statute, we have the regulations. So the principles embedded in those laws, those ones cannot be avoided. So once you are registered as a SACCO, then you have to uphold those principles. So those ones are imposed. Now, beyond the self-generated and the imposed principles, we can also benchmark. You know, someone may have developed systems, but when you look at them, they become quite exciting and you find them useful. So you can go a mile, an extra mile, and benchmark. You copy the good things that you have seen elsewhere, which you think can be applicable to your environment, and introduce them in your systems. So generally, those are the three major areas from which the principles of good governance emerge. One, by legislation, and those are imposed. Once government comes up with a law, compliance becomes mandatory. We cannot run away from them. Then two, there are those that are self-generated. You sit down, look at your systems, look at your interests, and say, in order to realize our dreams, this is how we have to manage our resources and be able to achieve what we want. Then three, we benchmark. We visit other sister organizations, look at their systems, compare with what we have, and where we see they are superseding us, we say, okay, let's go back and we also try this and see if it will work. Or we modify it to suit our local demands.
With all that, whether imposed or not imposed, let's come back in the ground. Do you see them practical, or they are just merely things to talk about and have tea and move away?
Looking at the practicability of these principles, I can say certain things are practical, like having in place the governance structures. Almost all SACCOs have these governance structures. Having systems in place like the financial management information system. All SACCOs must record the transactions from the first day of the year to the last day of the year. So, and when you talk of good governance, those are the issues we are looking at. So, depending on where you are, these things are practical. What may differ is the degree of practicability, because some SACCOs are advanced in terms of their numbers in membership, share capital, savings, loan portfolio. They can afford more expensive systems. Others are not yet at that level. So you may find a SACCO which has more money may have more complicated systems. For example, a SACCO which has introduced branches, you will find the demands for these governance issues increase. A SACCO which has only one branch may also have different demands for the government principles. So generally, the principles are good. They are practical because they say what we do, only that someone takes time to document them and arrange them in a systematic document. Otherwise, they are the very things that we do. when we talk of not being able to manage the SACCO director and therefore having a representation, that's what we do, and it's not new, because time and again, even when you read about the history of the cooperative movement in this country, you find that there were leaders. Even in the traditional society, leadership, they had to have someone to take lead. So, and this is what is being emphasized, maybe with some few modifications here and there. Otherwise, they are very practical.
You've stated that to me it is like you are setting systems for which you want structures to run very well. But for us, when we sit in, maybe some people say when we sit in our annual general meeting, maybe when we've been established this SACCO, we want it to be as quick as possible in perhaps accessing the services that the SACCO operates. And now for you and you, the system is creating bureaucracies which are going to take us long to access the services. We want from the SACCO.
You know, bureaucracy was something, sometimes what we call hereditary, has many disadvantages, like causing unnecessary delays. But you know, bureaucracy is not absolutely bad. What we need to manage is the excesses that arise or that may come with bureaucracy. Now, you know, if there are no systems, things can go wrong. If there are no systems, and it would mean that someone, whoever comes in, can make a decision. If there are no systems, someone may take any amount of money out of the SACCO and say he has borrowed it, if he has access to that money, particularly those interested in the leadership. But we can also use an analog of a medical doctor. You feel unwell and you go to a health unit. I can imagine a situation whereby on entering into the doctor's room and you immediately want the doctor to give you medicine. Now the question comes, which type of medicine? Because there are several types. And medicine to treat which kind of disease. So the doctor would say, okay, I do appreciate you are feeling unwell, you are feeling pain, a lot of pain, but I need to know the cause of that pain. If I know the cause of that pain, I will be able to determine the type of treatment to add